Hello, Miss Butta B-Rocka. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I am fabulous, and I'm so excited that you are here with Confidence Conversations today.
I appreciate getting the invitation. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, so you know a thing or two about confidence, and I want to dive in with what does confidence mean to you?
Confidence means to me telling your truth and standing on it.
Mhm.
Not wavering from what you believe in. That's confidence.
I love that. And you talk about standing in your truth. And as an artist, you have the ability to not just speak, but sing your truth. So tell me a bit about what that truth is for you and how you express yourself through your work.
Well, I express myself through my works by all of my lyrics, basically.
Mhm.
Almost every single song that I write is either my experience or one of my friends' experience or something that I see in the world that's happening that I'll write about. So everything that I write is about speaking my
I
truth.
love that. And it's such a beautiful way to express that. And I think sometimes if we let emotions or feelings and things stagnate within us, that's where we get into a place of feeling a lack of confidence. And so I think being able to express that is so important. So did you always know that this was a passion of yours, a dream that you needed to live out, or did it come sort of at a later point in life?
I've known I've wanted to be a singer since I was 4 years old.
Mm.
I saw Diana Ross singing on TV. I saw the crowd interacting with her. I saw her grace and her style on stage. And I knew then that was something that I wanted to do. And I really started honing in on it. I grew up singing in the church and stuff like that. And then I started pursuing music heavily by the age 11,
Okay.
and then I started getting into various talent shows and stuff like that, honing in on the crafts. At first, my group we was losing because we was brand new, but every single time that we lost, we would study. I grew up in the '90s, era where there was artist development and making sure that when you came on stage, you gave a show. You know what I
Right.
mean? So it taught us a whole lot, and then eventually we started winning everything. So it was really cool. Yeah,
I
but I've
love
always
that
known.
story of transformation, right? But I want to hear about how you got over that rejection because you mentioned that you were losing, and that's where a lot of people give up because it hurts. It does not feel good to be told, you're not good enough or you didn't win or whatever. So, how did you get through that and navigate that on a personal level?
Well, you are right. Rejection is hard. It's very hard for anyone to hear. And you have to have tough skin, especially in the music industry and in the filming industry. You have to have very tough skin because you have to realize that a no could just be no for that moment, or it could be no, we don't want to use you at this time, or you're just not the right fit. It's not, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a no to your talent. It could just mean that it's a no for right now. And that's how I used to always look at it. I would say, okay, well, you don't want me now. You're gonna want me. You're gonna want to work with me eventually. That's how I would look at it. And so every time we would lose, because again, I started doing talent shows when I was 11, and we formed a group in Tampa with me and my cousins, had never done talent shows before. So of course you got to get groomed and you got to learn the ropes of everything. But it taught me a valuable lesson as I grew up, to never give up and to continue to hone in on your craft, because that's the only way that you're going to get good is you go back, you plan, do reviews. So you look at what you're doing. We would always record our tapings and everything, and we would also record other people, see what they're
Mhm.
doing. How are you maneuvering on stage? How are you commanding the crowd? What are you doing? How are you speaking to the audience and stuff like that? So all of those things were teachable moments for me when I was young at age 11, learning the ropes and seeing your peers that are doing big things. And so that really helped me, you know, with who I am now.
I love that. And I want to know where your stage name came from in that process. So, when did you evolve to have this official presence? You're like, I have arrived, honey, and this is what we're going by now. Where did Butta B-Rocka come from?
So they started calling me Butter in Tampa. They would always say, "Oh, she has such a smooth voice," so they would call me
Yeah,
Butter.
yeah, yeah.
And then when I moved to Atlanta, I started doing backgrounds for TLC, and I was working with Usher and Bobby Brown's camp and different things like that. and I was going to put out my first album, and I was trying to figure out what name I wanted to be, because Butta, there was a lot of people called Butta that was rappers or guys, and people would always think that Butta was a guy.
Mm.
And when I was in the studio, they used to call me B-Rocka all the time. And so I just combined the two, because Butta
Yeah.
B-Rocka, you know.
I love that. That's so cool. And I know you have a song that came out not too long ago, Time Stands Still. And I'm wondering, did that come from a place that you were experiencing in your life, or where was the origins of that song and the beautiful video that you created from that?
That song is very near and dear to me. I just got married. Well, it's almost been a year now. I got married last year, June 18th, and I wrote that song for my husband.
Mm.
And I have never written a song for a man before. And I wanted to really be able to express myself and express how I was feeling. And so that's where the song originated from. It originated from being in love, because I was married before, and I was married for over 13 years. And I didn't think that I was going to get married again. You know, I got closed off to marriage, because let's face it, when you get married, you don't expect to get divorced. So going through that was very traumatic for me. I got kids and stuff like that. So I was closed off to love.
Mhm.
And when you get closed off, you're not looking. And it's just something that it's always one of those, when you're not looking is when you find something. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And neither one of us was looking, but we found each other, and I wanted to be able to express that. So it's about new beginnings, starting over, giving into love. And you know, when I think about him and how he makes me feel, time does stand still.
Oh,
So
that's so beautiful. That's beautiful. And
yeah.
I think that, you're so right. When devastating things like divorce or really big breakups happen, we do kind of move differently to protect ourselves. And I know that a lot of the women listening today have been through a situation like that. And I know for myself, when I've been through situations like that, I have noticed myself in the past shrink
Hmm.
and want to in this act of like seemingly protecting myself, I almost become obsolete and invisible to the world in this act of protecting myself. So how did you maintain this career where you are so visible, right? You have to be visible, you are the face, you are the voice. How do you do those things while you're going through difficult times, whether it's a divorce or anything else?
Well, when I was personally going through my divorce, I got back into school so that I
Mhm.
could keep my mind preoccupied. So I was touring overseas, and when I wasn't touring overseas, or even when I was touring overseas, I was doing school. I went back to school for marketing and PR. So it kept me busy. So between the boys, school, you know, and singing on tour, I didn't have time to think too much about my divorce, because I had to get dissertations done and stuff like that. So that was how I coped.
Yeah.
Some people cope differently, but for me, it was, let me stay busy and let me not think about it. But I did definitely become. I put a shield up, you know,
Mm.
against my heart, and I definitely guarded myself a whole lot more. I was definitely closed off, you know,
Yeah.
and just wanted to focus on the music.
Yeah. So, in focusing on the music, how do you show up authentically? Because as an artist, you kind of have to bear it all, where
Mhm.
it's easy to hide, right, in other fields or other industries. But when you are like front, first and foremost, you got to show up. You got to give that energy because that's
Yep.
what people are looking at. So, what are some tips that you can give us to show up authentically every day?
Some tips I would say is just go within. I do a lot of heavy breathing and meditations before I would go on stage and everything, because you are right. Like, when it's time to get on stage, you got to be front and center, and you got to let everything that you have go so that you can give that energy. And one of the things that I pull from is the crowd's energy. You know, they you know, seeing the looks on their face, and the energy that they're giving to me, it makes me go hard, and it makes me forget and let go of everything that I'm going through.
I love that. And what do you do when you don't have, so like let's say you're not in front of the crowd anymore and now you're at home. How can we kind of glean off of that energy? Because not all of us have a crowd, but
Yeah.
how do we stay confident in our own skin?
I write. I get everything out of my system. I have to get it out of my head, how
Yeah.
I'm feeling. And then I also write a lot of affirmations to myself, and I forgive myself because a lot of times you'll take in all of this negative energy and you'll put it on yourself. And so I have to release that type of stuff. Thankfully, I do write. I listen to a lot of self motivation audio, and I read a lot of books about self motivation and stuff like that. So
It's
that's
so
how I do
important. Yeah, because the writing is your way of releasing,
it. Mhm.
and then you're pouring into your cup through the books and the content that you're consuming. But I think there's such a therapeutic place for both of those, right?
Mhm.
And we have to do both. And I think, you're obviously writing songs and you're expressing yourself through your music, but even just a simple act of journaling or even
Mhm.
affirmations is so powerful because you literally give yourself the opportunity to read between the lines of your thoughts.
Right. Right.
There's so much that goes on up here that we're not even aware of. So much like stagnant energy, hurt, pain, trauma, joy, even that like we're experiencing at any given moment that's manifesting itself in our bodies that we're not even consciously aware of. And so getting that out is so therapeutic and cathartic, and then filling yourself up with the stuff that you need, that
Right.
motivation, those affirmations.
Absolutely. I think it's very important. Like I said, I do journal and I do write out my thoughts and I do affirmations. Those are things that I rely on very heavily to let me cope and allow me to get through my days, because you're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days. And it's just a matter of going through it all.
Yeah. And being in the visible light as you are, I think it can be difficult sometimes, even just showing up for my podcast. So I can only imagine what you go through. But how do you pour into your own cup to make sure that you're good? So you have your affirmations, you have your journaling, but are there other things that you structure your day around to make sure that, all right, I'm good, I've poured into my own cup and I have what I need, so now I can go out and do my
Yeah.
job?
I have a prayer closet, and I'm into crystals and different things like that. So I
Yeah.
go into my prayer closet, I look at the different affirmations that I have on my walls, and I meditate before I start my day.
Okay. Where did your meditation practice come from? I know for me, it was like I had a moment where I fell to my knees and I was like, God help. And it was a scary moment, right? Because I was at this point of breaking.
Yeah.
But
So when I think I was going on 18, I had a deal on the table with Warner and one with Sony Records. And
mhm,
I got into a car accident. I was headed literally to my attorney's office, and we was on the second proposals that we was going to be talking about. And I got into a car accident and I didn't make it there. And so that situation, it took me a year to come back out. I had surgery through my mouth. I had to drink from a straw for 6 months. So it took me a year to come back out. When I tried to come back out, the deals were no longer on the table. Warner had revamped, so it was completely, totally different people there. And Sony had just signed a young lady that was my age. Then I went to the third label, and the third label basically told me that I missed the boat because at that particular time, they were now signing the 12 and 13-year-old Britney Spears age. So here I am, 17 going on 18, hearing that all of my hopes and dreams have just been, have just faded. And
mhm,
so it was a very traumatic time for me. And what I took with that is I had to learn how to cope, and I had to learn what was next for me. You know what I mean? And it was a very traumatic time, but that's when I learned how to, go within myself and forgive myself, not be harsh on myself. And that's where I started reading The Prosperity Secrets of the Ages,
mhm.
by Catherine Ponder, and that was like an eye opener of forgiving myself and letting it go and not blaming myself for anything. And it taught me that I can have whatever I want to have. If you're focusing on the negative, you're going to continue to receive negative. If you start focusing on the positive and start matching your energies with positivity, that's where you'll be.
I love that. And it's such an inspiring story that you tell because we all have these moments in our lives where it feels like we're never going to get there, or like whether it's rejection, it's an accident, something that happens where it's like full stop, no. And that's the place of the pivot. And it's all in the way that we look at it and the way that we choose to proceed that makes or breaks us. And that makes all of the difference. And I think that what you just express in part is the law of attraction too. We go through that grieving process, right? We have to then sit with ourselves and say, all right, you have your emotions, that's real. You have your feelings, that's real. But your vibe, your energy attracts everything into your life. If your energy, I was reading something where like people who have this like angry energy, even when they seem happy, but it's just energy within them, they get into like 10 times more fights than people without the angry, like you just attract it to you.
Right.
And so for you to notice that and switch that and say, no matter what, this is the vibe, this is the frequency, and I'm being very intentional, even if I don't know what I'm going to do or how. One, in that belief, in that faith, in that trust, and two, about how I feel about myself, because that's not going to change. I think that's powerful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So, what advice can you give to other people who may have issues seeing the light at the end of the tunnel? Because it's one thing to be able to say that, and another to be like, all right, I'm going to have this faith and trust in myself.
Advice I can give is hang around people that motivate you, that inspire you, so that you can, even if you're feeling low, you can tap into their energy, or you can tap into their positivity and everything. That's what I tend to do when I do have my moments. My family and other people that are mentors to me, I'll tap into what they're doing, or I'll see what they're doing, and that gives me the motivation to keep going and stuff like that.
I love that. You've given us a lot of wisdom here today, but I got to tap into some of these positive affirmations. We love a good positive affirmation at Confidence Daily. So can you give us some of your favorite?
Yeah. Some of my favorite confirmations is I am worthy.
Mm,
That's my biggest one. I am worthy. I am worthy of everything, because we tend to think, well, I used to think, especially when the deals were no longer on the table, I started to feel like I was a failure. And so that's the biggest thing that I say to myself. I am worthy, I am grateful, I am able to accomplish anything that I've set my sights on. It's so many things that I say to myself.
So what do you have your sights set on now? What's next for you?
Well, I just had my premiere of my feature film that I executive produced, directed, and produced. I mean, and wrote. And so I just had that premiere this past Sunday, and it was amazing. It sold out in 2 weeks. I had from Les Brown was in attendance, a guy named N Burke who he worked with TLC and Akon and Arrested Development. I had Delapo, who came from BET, came to my event. And to see everybody come support me, it was completely sold out. I did it on a prime night. Typically, independent films are done Monday through Thursday, but I did it on the weekend. And I bought out the biggest theater at the movie theater, and to see the love and support was just absolutely amazing. Right now, I'm shopping the film. It I'm talking to Peacock, Hulu, and Tubi, and some international distributors right now.
Yeah.
And that was something that I had not expected. Music has been my pathway since forever.
Right.
And in 2019, I had a torn meniscus, torn ACL, and I dislocated my shoulder. I was dancing, getting ready for a show of guitar. And that left me out of commission for an entire year. I had to go do physical therapy 3 times a week. I mean, yeah, 3 times a week for a year. I had to learn to walk with a walker for 3 months. Then I switched to a cane for 2 months. And it was very traumatic because music has been the only source since 2007. I've been touring the world working with all these different people. And
Mm,
so when you have something traumatic like that happen to you, you have to pivot and you have to figure out what else are your strengths. And so in getting hurt and having to sit down for that year, then followed by COVID. So I got released to be able to go on tour, and I was supposed to start a tour up in Africa in April of 2020, but COVID had just hit around March. So that's another year that was that the music industry was down. Technically, the music industry was down for 2 years because they weren't doing anything in 2020 and was barely doing anything in 2021. So that's almost 3 years for me to just sit and be quiet and figure out, okay, what are some other strengths? And so with me having to sit down, I birthed a book. I became an author. My book became an Amazon bestseller and best new release in 7 hours of being released. My kids formed their magazine, Defiant Ones Teen Magazine, and we started getting approached by all of these big companies and everything. And they feature a lot of amazing teens and young adults in the magazine. My podcast was birthed. I am now on 7 syndicated stations overseas. I'm in London, Italy, Japan, South Africa, Nigeria, Canada, and I'm on iHeartRadio with 1.2 million listeners. None of this was possible. And then I also did my own film. I was going to do a web series. I had wrote 13 episodes, but when I started looking at the cost of how much it was going to be to do all of these episodes, I said, okay, yeah, we're going to have to change this up.
Yeah.
So I wrote my first film that I've never done a film. I just dived right on in, and to now have the premiere happen and it becomes sold out. And it was so many people there. I had 2-step and repeats. I had 6 media companies there. And it was just, it felt like a movie. And to see all of these things be accomplished, one, because I didn't give up on myself, two, because I was open to other avenues and other possibilities. That's one of the lessons that I definitely want to tell everybody. Don't be so confined to just one thing. Again, my focus for years was only music, but had I not injured myself and been forced to come up with other avenues and forced to tap into what else I could give, none of the other things would have been birthed.
Yeah, and it's another example about how our pain breathes life into our purpose.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're just on autopilot, or maybe we're doing things with intention, but it's what we've always done, right? And so that's our identity. And it's so tied up into that thing of who we think that we are, which I always say this, like, human beings, not human doings. Like, what I do, it does not define who I am. But when we have that sort of insular view of things, we negate this opportunity to experience the rest of the world and let the rest of the world experience us.
Yep.
And so sometimes life has these really seemingly unfortunate twists and turns. Like, it is not fun to have a torn ACL. I have not had one, but they say that is like the worst injury that you could have, or a torn meniscus. But going through something like that is what gets you to stop and pivot.
Yep.
And find, okay, what do I need right now in this moment? And what can I do right now in this moment? Not what do I want to do? What am I going to get back to doing? What can I do right now? And there's so much power in that individual moment.
Yeah, you just hit it on the nail. It forced me to pivot, and it forced me to live in the now.
Yeah.
We sometimes are so focused on what used to happen or what we're trying to get accomplished that we don't live in the now. And I'm trying to be more intentional on living in the now, smelling the roses as they're coming, and appreciating every milestone that I am taking. I used to be one of those, okay, yes, I worked with Janet Jackson. Okay, yes, I worked with Kanye West. But what's next? What's next?
Yeah.
And I wasn't appreciating our just sitting in, chick, you just did all of these amazing things. What are you talking about? You're so focused on what's next, and sit in the moment, live in the moment, appreciate where you're at, and then move forward. Live in your now.
It's so true, because like the things that you mentioned are dreams, right? those are dreams that became manifest. And the crazy thing about our little human brains is that we're so on the go that like once you get the job where you're working for Janet Jackson or all of these people that you probably dreamed of partnering with, then it's on to the next rather than like sitting there and soaking in that moment.
Yep.
And what happens there is a couple of things. One, we start going on this hamster wheel of autopilot. And then two, we block our own blessings in that moment because the key to abundance and like manifesting anything is gratitude.
Right.
If you're not able to sit there and experience that, whether you're saying it out loud, like, I'm so grateful for this moment, or just like feeling it, like, oh, this, I'm like here right now, like I'm doing this. Like I said this 5 years ago, I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not allowing yourself to like experience and love the journey, at some point, that journey becomes dull. It sucks. You don't like walking the path, and you realize that the thing that you dreamed about is now the thing that you hate.
Mm-hmm.
So getting back to like, really, I love this. I'm doing it because of this. And really living and breathing that and enjoying the journey, not just trying to get to the destination, I think is so key.
Absolutely. I agree.
So on your destination or on your journey right now, what are some of the things that you are most proud of? You have your film, you're shopping out, and I cannot wait to see where it lands. So you have to keep in touch about that. But what are some of the things that you're grateful for in your journey right now?
I'm actually grateful for everything. I'm grateful for the full journey. I'm grateful for my music side. I'm grateful for being an author. I'm grateful for my podcast and being a host. I'm grateful for being a director and jumping into this filming world. I'm grateful for it all. I'm grateful for every single opportunity that I've had, big or small. I'm one of them people that even when I would do the clubs, I don't really do too many clubs that much anymore, but from the clubs, it didn't matter if it was 10 people there to performing in front of thousands and thousands of people. I'm grateful for it all. And I always would, even if it was a small show, would still perform as if it was the biggest show of my life, because you never know who's going to be there. And all of those people that are there, they're still there for you. So you still have to deliver and be on 10 at all times. So I'm grateful for every situation, honestly.
Yeah, grateful for it all. Well, before I let you go, do you have any final words of wisdom for us?
Uh, I would just say go after your dreams. It doesn't matter your age, it doesn't matter your status, it doesn't matter anything that you got going on. If it's something that you can see in your mind, to me, that's a blueprint. And that's God like talking to you saying that this is an insight of what you can have if you put in the work and you go for it. So I would just say go for your dreams. Don't
Well,
stop.
yeah. Yeah, never stop, never stopping. Well, thank you so much for joining me today for Confidence Conversations.
Thank you for having me on your show. I truly appreciate it.